Thanks, guys. Let's go. What is up, everyone, and welcome back to another video after yet another semester-long break. And although you guys might have expected me back just to cross off another video from my to-do list, I am actually back today to get a little more creative. So as a video that quite a few of you have actually been asking for, I'm going to try my best to explain the ins and outs of dice stacking to you all today, which really boils down to three main categories, including normal stacking, point stacking, and finally destacking. And I'll also note that since these three types actually build on each other really well, I'm hoping to use this tutorial to cover all three with as little overlap as possible, meaning that, for example, some of the techniques used during the later sections may only be fully explained during the fundamentals portion. So regardless of your level of experience, this will just be something I advise you to keep in mind as we move through the video. But without further ado, I'd say let's just jump right into the video. Okay everyone, so to kick off this tutorial, we are going to start by just combing through some of the basics of the normal dice stacking. And before we even get into the motions, I'd just like to mention a few details about our setup here, which for basically the easiest way to learn dice stacking are going to include a cup with straight sides, or most commonly a Yahtzee cup, a set of 19mm razor edge casino dice, and then just a nice flat surface that isn't like scratchy in any way. And once we have all this, the way I like to hold the cup as a dice stacker is thumb on one side, index finger on top, and the remaining three fingers on the opposite side, which really kind of gives you a nice balanced grip for when you're stacking the dice. But once again, before we even touch the dice, I'd just like to mention one more common misconception among so many dice stackers, which all stems from this motion right here. Because when first learning dice stacking, most people don't seem to realize that the proper behavior of the dice inside the cup isn't just caused by inertia, but also a tilt of the cup at about a 45-degree angle during the swing that allows each dice to shoot straight up after coming into contact with the cup. So more than anything, I would simply recommend getting used to a motion like this as opposed to this before even touching the dice, and once you're comfortable, throw in a single dice and practice getting it to stay in the back of the cup after you picked it up. And once you can do that and repeat the process with multiple dice, a natural force known as centripetal force will keep each of the dice in a vertical stack and ultimately allow you to finish the stack with just a single slide, like so. And while I will advise you to be careful not to finish the stack with a slide that's too abrupt, I will say that if you can at least get to the final part of this stack, you'll officially have everything you need to move on to point stacking. Alright everyone, so now that we've made it through the fundamental motions of this video, we're going to move on to something a little more difficult called point stacking. And as you've probably seen before, point stacking uses a modified motion to set stacks of dice on elevated surfaces, which honestly vary from flat to pointed to even rounded, and can realistically be any given size as well. So building upon the techniques we just talked about, I'm going to teach you how they apply to any of these surfaces in just a couple steps. So first off, if we take a look at the typical point stacking motion, you'll notice that it looks pretty similar to the motion we talked about earlier, just tilted at a 45-degree angle. And what's amazing is that since all the same rules of physics apply from earlier, this motion is precisely what we're hoping to achieve with point stacking, which really leaves us with just one outstanding question. How do we get from this to this? And the answer is simple: practice. Yes, I know it may sound cliche, but when you're first making the transition to point stacking, there will come a time where you have to find a way to maintain the motion without the support of a surface. And in fact, one tip I like to offer for this is to actually start with a motion that's perpendicular to the surface, which essentially eliminates the chance of the dice sliding out of the cup. And as you'll notice, this is actually the exact strategy I myself used when first learning point stacking, which over time just naturally kind of gives you the comfort to start adding a tilt to the motion. And once you've got it to the point that you can cleanly lift the dice at a 45-degree angle, you're officially ready to move on to the point stack finish, which actually comes in two distinct variations. And the first of these, or the one you'll see most often, is what I like to call a slam finish, which basically applies to any point stack on a surface that can fit inside the cup. And I know this may sound confusing, but basically why it works this way is that if you take a close look at the dice in the cup, there is almost always going to be just a small amount of space between the bottom dice and just the edge of the cup, which in the motion of a point stack goes fully unaccounted for until the very moment the dice are set onto the surface. And the reason I point this out is that only surfaces that fit inside the cup will make direct and immediate contact with the dice, while those that don't will simply force the dice to fall onto the surface and risk falling over as a result. So for cases like these, we actually have to apply the second version of the point stack finish, which I like to refer to as a slide finish. And while I will admit this is one of the more advanced techniques to learn just in general, I will say that this motion builds off of the previous motion in a much more applicable way than the slam finish. Because while the slam finish is all about having the dice make immediate contact with the surface, the slide finish first involves fading the motion into a horizontal swing, which, by mirroring the fundamental motion in mid-air, allows for a finish that is much more likely to have the dice land properly on a larger surface, compared to how they would with a slam finish. And what's amazing is that by introducing the horizontal motion in mid-air, the slide finish actually serves as really good practice for what's to come in the next section. So as we move on, I would just advise you all to take the time to mirror each of these visuals and really just practice away until you're comfortable with both types of the point stack finishes. And at that point, I'm proud to say that you'll officially have everything you need to move on to destacking. Okay guys, so now to move on to the most advanced portion of this tutorial, we are going to cover destacking. And while destacking may look super complex from a visual perspective, the good news is that it really applies almost nothing more than just some of the motions we've already covered, and without a distinct finish, can technically be learned at a much quicker pace than, say, something like point stacking. So as you just saw, the first and most essential motion to learn for this trick is in fact the horizontal motion in mid-air, which puts the cup in a proper position to remove each of the dice from the stack, really in a pretty similar way to how they're picked up off the table in the fundamental motion. And once you have this down, basically the entire rest of destacking is all about getting used to a motion that simply works for you, although I will point out just a slight nuance that may help to simplify the process. Because if we take a look at the destacking motion using both an outward swing and an inward swing, you'll notice that the positions of the cups as they typically first touch the dice are quite different. And since we know from early in the video that a greater tilt of the cup is always better, the technique of using an inward swing is the easiest form to use when learning destacking, specifically by creating less friction against the top of the stack. And once you've learned this type, you'll be happy to know that all that's really left is getting used to applying the process to a variety of surfaces, since destacking is usually the transitional trick in a typical dice stacking combo shot. And however you choose to do this, just know that by simply having made it to this point in the tutorial, you've already accomplished so much within the realm of dice stacking, and now will face a world of possibilities for where you can take it in the future. So best of luck, congrats on your progress, and I can't wait to see what you will choose to do with dice stacking. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and if you found this tutorial helpful, please consider subscribing. And also feel free to let me know down below if I missed anything, and I'll make sure to add a note to the description. See you guys next time.